So greetings, everyone. My name is Peter Young, and I am your moderator for this event this evening. I am on the board of Committee 100 and regional chair, and happen to be chair of this Conversations, Recollections, Pioneers, and Heroes series that this is the seventh one that we've done. And I'm particularly pleased to be interviewing Elaine Chao, who is, without question, deserving of being interviewed on this program. She has a pretty remarkable career. The whole reason that we started this program is we felt that it was very important to interview prominent Chinese Americans from different professions and different walks of life who contributed to the success of America through their pioneering efforts or their heroic achievements or recollection of important events. This is a live broadcast, but this is being recorded, and it'll be posted on a library of these interviews on the Committee 100 website. The Honorable Elaine Chao was the 24th U.S. Secretary of Labor, and also the 18th U.S. Secretary of Transportation. And there's so many things that are distinctive about her career, but I think she is the first Asian Pacific American woman to serve in the president's cabinet in the American history, and she's also the longest serving cabinet secretary since World War II. I just want to mention there's so many things about her career that we could talk about, and it would take the whole 45 minutes if I went through her resume. But I think that the couple things I'd like to highlight: one, she had a successful career in business and finance, and eventually became head of the Peace Corps, and also was president and CEO of United Way. And both places, she accomplished a number of significant things that really made a difference. But at the Department of Transportation, she focused on keeping our transportation system safe and efficient, investing very large amounts of money in infrastructure over the 3.5 years, and including new technologies in autonomous vehicles, drones, and commercial space launches. I think most people don't realize just how many parts of the world are under the Department of Transportation, but it's a lot. And also, as U.S. Secretary of Labor, she focused on increasing the competitiveness of Americans in the global economy, and set some new records for workplace safety, health, and the retirement security of many retirees, and passed the Pension Protection Act of 2006. So I could go on, but I think it would take the entire session. But we're very pleased to have her. And what I'd like to do is I just have some questions I want to pose to her and really have a conversation, right? About, by the way,
Sure.
I'm very privileged to have known Elaine Chao before she was famous, and before she went to Harvard Business School, which we both graduated from. So let's just start out. Maybe if you could walk us a little bit through some key points in your personal history from the time you were growing up and some of the highlights and turning points of your career. I mean, you were an immigrant, right? And you didn't speak English when you first got here. So maybe you can start there.
You know, I think being Asian, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a great delight. I'm so glad you're doing something like this to chronicle the contributions of Asian Pacific Americans to America. I think that is very important. And that's also one of the reasons why I am engaged in trying to help others with a group of people to establish a national museum on Asian Pacific American culture and history. Given what's happened during COVID-19 and the animus toward Asian Americans, I wanted to do something to contribute to an effort in which the contributions and the legacy of Asian Americans are recognized, appreciated, and also celebrated. So you asked about my background. My background is actually very much like, I'm sure, those of your listeners and many others. My story is the American story, and it talks about the opportunities that this country gives to outsiders, how they become insiders, and hopefully how they can contribute. And being Asian American, I always start with my parents' story. And this is uniquely Asian American. When I speak with young Asian Americans, they understand right away when I talk about my family, when I talk about my parents, the sacrifices that my parents went through to bring their daughters to America and to give us the opportunities that we've had. So I start with my parents, and theirs is a real love story. So my father grew up in a little farming village outside of Shanghai, in a village of only 8 families. My mother, on the other hand, grew up in a very wealthy, prosperous, and very respected, distinguished family in Anhui province. And it is a story of the turmoil of Chinese history that two young people of such disparate backgrounds can get together. And it was because my mother's family went to Nanjing, where she was studying. The Japanese invaded, and then they sought refuge in Shanghai. My mother went to Jiading #1 High School, which was my father's alma mater. And one winter day in 1949, my father came back from his college, Jiaotong University, and they were introduced by mutual friends. Now, nowadays, it doesn't seem so strange, but in those days, for two young people to be introduced to one another by mutual friends rather than parents was astounding. And at that time, my father was still a young man of very modest being. And so he got scholarships after scholarships to be able to go to elementary school, middle school, high school, finally college, Jiaotong University. And he never thought that he would have a chance with my mother. So in the winter of 1949, they had a wonderful time with their friends. And we have 25 black and white candidates of my parents with their friends. And as you know, most pictures with Chinese people are very stilted and very formal. So to see these two young people with their friends kind of like hanging out was just so precious. And then on May 18th, my father, because he was studying marine engineering, uh, went on a ship to get his seagoing experience to augment his degree. And his father came to say goodbye to him. It was very unusual. But by that time, they had sensed that something major was going to happen. And my father went on the ship, and 8 days later, depending on your ideology, Shanghai either falls or Shanghai is liberated. And his ship set sail for Taiwan. My father, being very bright, thought, well, Ruth, my mother's name, must be in Taiwan because she's wealthy. She comes from a distinguished family. And so if she were not in Taiwan, then she wouldn't have a chance at all. And so he looked for her for 2.5 years. He finally found her. Everybody was equally poor by that time. They lost my mother's family, lost everything. And so my father had a chance. So my father's really, really philosophical and funny too. He says, in crisis, in turmoil, there is always opportunity.
Mhm.
And so he persuaded her to marry him. They started a family, and he became one of the youngest sea captains of his time at the age of 29. He was very young, and he thought that he can take a chance and seek his fortunes elsewhere. So he took a national examination. It was 4 days. He scored #1, broke all the records, and had a chance to go to America. My mother was then 7 months pregnant. And at that time, if you had a chance to go to America, you went right away. So he left right away. They didn't know when they would ever get together again, how long the separation was, but they had love for each other and hope for the future. Well, it took my father 3 years before he was able to bring my mother, my 2 sisters, and me to America. And my father met his third daughter for the first time in America, in New York, when we arrived, and she was already 3 years old. So we started our life in Queens, New York, Jamaica. I still remember the address, 14145 85th Road. And my father and I go back there periodically just to remind ourselves as to how far we've come and where we came from. We came from a one-bedroom apartment in that complex. And then as situation got better, he went to St. John's University. And unlike a lot of other Asian Americans, he studied management. He didn't study engineering or the sciences. He studied management. And so when he graduated, he started his own company, an international shipping company. He has worked so hard to make that company a success. And 60 years later, it is doing very, very well. And as his situation got better financially, our family moved from the one-bedroom apartment to a two-bedroom apartment in Queens, New York. Then we went to a little house in Syosset, New York. And then we went to Westchester County. So I will always remember the feelings of vulnerability, the feelings of fear, and the unfamiliarity with American culture, with American traditions, and also with Americans. I didn't understand them. I still don't sometimes. Mm-hmm. And yet, we had each other. Our family unit was strong. We loved each other. We had hope for the future. And we had just such optimism that America is a land of opportunities, and that if we worked hard, we would do well. Yeah. So that's a wonderful gift that my parents gave their children. Diligence, hard work, of course, but hope, determination, and confidence in the future. And so when I am in my leadership positions, that's what I try to convey. I never want to forget those feelings of anxiety, fearfulness, vulnerability, and I want to remember them because they make me a better leader. They make me remember what it was like. And I want to help others to jump over, to cross over to a new life here in America where they can access lots of opportunities.
Of course, you failed to mention your father's biggest challenge, right? 4 daughters and a wife, all women.
Oh,
right?
no, 6 daughters.
6 daughters. Oh my God. I miscounted.
There are 3 of us, and we came from Taiwan, and there's almost a second generation. So as my parents' financial situation got better, they had 3 more daughters, 3 born in America. Yeah. And it's, and we're almost like 2 generations. The first 3 are pretty Chinese. The latter 3 are much more Americanized. Well,
Elaine, if you study science, it's supposed to be 50-50 chance between having a boy or a girl. So clearly the strong female genes broke through, right?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned, I'll give some jokes and also be serious about that as well. When I was growing up, my parents used to be the pity of their friends and relatives. Yeah. And friends and relatives would say, oh, James and Ruth, you have such a wonderful family. You have such smart daughters. Too bad they're girls. And they would openly say that. And so my sisters and I, we had a tradition that we were going to make our parents proud, that we were going to lift up, make our family proud. And so we fashioned ourselves as Mulans. Do you know there's a Chinese folklore, Zhu Mulan? Mm-hmm. And this is a folklore very well known in China of this young woman who volunteered to go into the armed forces because there was forced conscription, and her father was too elderly, her brother was too young. So she dressed herself as a man and went into battle on their behalf, on behalf of the country as well. And she became a very famous general. So the Chao girls would think about ourselves as like, we are Hua Mulans, we're women warriors, and we are fighting for justice, and honor for our family.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of fun too.
Well, being the middle child with an older sister, younger sister, both of whom are a lot like your sisters and you, I know
You
what.
have two very strong sisters as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I know what the experience is. Now, it's very interesting because, uh, if you look at the backgrounds of, of your sisters and so forth and your father, it was very much business, shipping, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in your case, though, at some point, although you were in finance and in business for a while, you then moved into government. Tell us about that transition. What was it that motivated you suddenly to shift out of business, which you could have continued. You could have been in the family business. You could have,
Oh, I
continued.
couldn't have cut it.
Yeah. No, but
So
what caused you to shift to be more in public service and in government?
again, I give my parents a lot of credit because they were convinced that America was a land of opportunity. And even though they could not tell exactly what opportunities their daughters would find, they knew that greater opportunities lie in this land.
Mhm,
And so they empowered us.
mhm,
They encouraged us to explore.
mhm,
My father was always saying, now look at the big wide world outside. We're now currently living in a small immigrant community, but the world is so much bigger than the world that we're living in now.
mhm,
And it's your responsibility to go out and see what it's like.
mhm,
We are Christians, and so it's like the biblical tale of talents,
mhm.
that each one of us has talents, and it's God given, and it's up to us to find our talents. And it's similar to what Americans talk about in terms of finding your passions.
Yeah.
Find something that you really love and develop your talent. So I was curious. I didn't understand America.
Mhm,
And I just didn't understand so much about America. So I went into banking and worked for Citibank after graduating from Harvard Business School. And while there, I learned about the White House Fellowship Program.
mhm,
And I wanted to learn about the American government because I didn't understand it.
mhm,
I would do a deal, for example, if it's a private sector, it would be four people, myself, the banker, the borrower, our lawyers, four people, and it would be concluded in 2 hours. If I ever did a government deal, it would be like months to consummate. There would be 35 lawyers on the other side, a room full of documents. So I just couldn't understand how government can be so inefficient.
right.
But I learned a lot. And so that's what prompted me to apply for the White House Fellowship Program and learn about it. And then one step led to another. In government, if you have, if you're willing to work and you're enthusiastic, I mean, it's in everything. You get lots of opportunities. So I had opportunities after I went to the White House Fellowship Program. I went back to banking. And then I got a phone call from Elizabeth Dole's office saying that they needed someone who understood shipping and banking because one of her agencies, the Maritime Administration, was losing about $1.9 billion a year. Now, at that time, that was a big deal. Nowadays, it's almost like a pittance. And so they needed someone who understood asset sales, shipping, banking, because it was going to be a workout situation.
Yeah, right.
So on 2 weeks' notice, I basically accepted the job, flew back from San Francisco, found an apartment over one weekend in Washington, D.C., moved myself from San Francisco back to DC after having moved from New York to San Francisco just 2.5 years prior.
Mhm.
And then I started in Washington. And then again, one thing led to another. And I firmly believe that if you are hardworking, you're enthusiastic, and you want to kind of help and learn. I mean,
Yeah,
I look for a person like that nowadays. You're going to do well. There'll
yeah,
be opportunities. People are looking out for high performers, whether you realize it or not. You know, people at the top, they're looking always for young people to bring along because they need them.
mhm,
So I always encourage people, do more than you are asked to do. Always learn, understand the big picture, don't just stick with your little, cubbyhole. Understand the larger picture, and don't be shy about speaking up and, learning, expressing yourself. In this society, in America, that is very important.
Yeah.
Speaking out, learning to express yourself, ask questions. They like people who ask questions. And I didn't understand that. I was afraid to. I was afraid to speak up. I was afraid to ask questions. And then I learned they like that. So I learned.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's very interesting because uh, when you first went into government, it's still difficult now for Asian Americans, in most industries. But dialing back to when you started in government, it was particularly difficult. So what was it that and not only Asian American, but you were a woman, right? Which of course, it has been a challenge at times. So what?
And I was young. And I was young.
And when you thought, so what is it, do you think, that allowed you to sort of overcome what today are still barriers, but there were really much bigger barriers years ago?
Well, yes, there were definitely barriers. When we first came to America, the Asian American population, the Asian American and Asian population in America was less than 1%. So Chinese were even a smaller percentage.
We were too small. We were too small to be a minority.
Yes, but I want to tell you, when I became Secretary of Labor, I broke out the employment data on Asian Americans and Asians in America for the very first time in history, so that now we know that Asian Pacific American and Asian employment in the United States is among the lowest. It's about 2.4%. We would not have known that.
Right.
If I hadn't broken that out in 2003, and we would not have known the impact that COVID had on Asian American and Asian employment in the United States had I not done that in 2003. So being in these positions of responsibility can be very rewarding because you can really, really do a lot of good things. Mm-hmm. But going back to your question, so when I was first starting out in government, reporters would ask me, well, you're young, you're a minority, you're female, don't you feel like terribly discriminated against? And I thought to myself, if I thought that because I was young, a minority, which is a term at the time, a female, that I couldn't make it in this world, I wouldn't get out of bed in the mornings.
Yeah.
But I am my father's and my mother's daughter. So I am just so enthusiastic, and I greet each day with a lot of excitement and with joy. And I think what helped was I just loved what I was doing. Mm-hmm. I was so interested in learning about America. Mm-hmm. And if you have something that you are really passionate about, that helps. It will ameliorate and it will blunt some of the indignities that you would face on the way up.
Yeah.
And there were people who were mean.
I'm sure.
Yeah, people who were worse than mean. They would just look past me. They wouldn't even acknowledge my presence.
Yeah.
Which is why when I became secretary, when I go to different places to visit, there would be people who would be specially selected to greet me at the entrance and to be able to say hello to me. Mm-hmm. A lot of secretaries just brush past them. Mm-hmm. I don't, because I remember I was one of those people who would be not even the front line greeting the VIP. I'd be one of these people, little people in the back, that if I can just catch a glimpse of the VIP, I would have been so, so happy. So I always make a point to say hello to them, to get their names, to spend a few moments chatting with them, understanding where they're from and what they were doing. It's respect. It's respect for those who spare the time to come and see me. And I appreciate that very, very much. Yeah. And so, I just love what I was doing. So you have to find something that you really love. And when you do, it makes daily life a lot easier.
Warren Buffett and Steve Jobs were both asked the same question related to what you said. And they said, how do you, the question was, how do you choose where to go into as a profession? And they both said the same thing. And they were radically different people. And they both said, you got to do what you love. If you're lucky and you're good at what you love, that's great. But even if not, it's better to do something that you love, whether you're great at it or not, than something that you don't love, right?
And that's what's great about this country.
Right,
Part of what determining what you love means determining what you don't like.
right,
And in this country, you can make mistakes, lots of mistakes, and you can have many, many new starts. So the average 40-year-old, let me say that again. The average American worker, by the time they are 40 years old, will have had 10 jobs already. Now, this is the data that I had when I was Secretary of Labor long time ago. So I would imagine that that number has only accelerated given the gig economy that we now have.
yeah,
So it's not a big deal in this country to go from job to job and to fail in some and not like some others. In the process, you learn what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at. And I think for Asian Americans, this is difficult
yeah,
because our parents love us so much that they want us to have a steady job.
yeah,
They want us to find something that we can be secure in because their own lives have been so difficult. But
yeah,
again, in this country, it's there's so many opportunities. I
yeah,
remember when I was a young girl and I was so afraid that I would miss opportunities, that I wouldn't have opportunities. And if I ever missed an opportunity, I would berate myself for days afterwards, thinking within myself, what did I do wrong? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? Because I did something wrong, I missed this opportunity. And I realized later on, this country has so many opportunities, so long as you don't give up. And if you miss one opportunity, pick yourself up, don't worry about it. Another one will come its way pretty soon.
yeah.
And
Actually, one of the things I love to do is study the lives of people, accomplished people, famous people in government, like whether it's Abraham Lincoln or FDR, or whatever. And the one common thing you see is almost virtually everyone had some major setback or multiple setbacks. But the key was not supposedly being lucky and never having setbacks. It's what they did to get through them. I mean, if you look at the list of things that Abraham Lincoln went through before he became president, it's just horrific. But, how about you? Did you have any setbacks or were you just really, really lucky?
I used to think I was really lucky,
Mhm.
and I was very grateful, and I still am.
Mhm.
But now, at my age, I have to confess, I was pretty amazing.
Mhm.
Number one, I was indefatigable in terms of working. I mean, I worked all the time and I
Mhm.
loved it. I
Mhm.
was learning. I loved what I was doing. It was not work at all.
Mhm.
And number two, I had a photographic memory. Not anymore, but at the time I can remember people's names, faces, occupations, family members, the name of their dog, the name of their cat. I mean, I remembered immediately, and it was effortlessly to me. And so I couldn't, and I would look at a spreadsheet, and I can remember that spreadsheet. If you showed it to me 3 months later, I
Mhm.
can see where the numbers are, where it's been changed. And I thought everybody knew how to do that. And
Mhm.
then I learned not everybody does that because I begin to lose my memory or
Mhm.
not be as good as I used to. And so I worked very hard, and I was also extraordinarily, um, extraordinarily thankful for my abilities.
Yeah.
It was, but I didn't know it. So that made it very nice because I was very humble and I was very, I was very modest. And, but looking back, I mean, I wish I can find a little Elaine Chao now to be my assistant because it would help quite a bit.
It's interesting because we've been doing some work, Committee 100, and we just completed a survey that was very interesting. And some things that came out of it as to what caused difficulties for Asian Americans. And one is their own behavior, which is the lack of
Yeah.
aggressiveness and so forth. Do you feel in your case, you clearly, as you said, you overcame that and you said, okay, I've got to be more aggressive. Did that come from you? Is it something that came from your parents? Because typically Asian parents, they're the opposite. They say, oh, don't be aggressive, just do hard work, whatever. Where did it
Yeah,
come
there's a
from?
difference. There's a difference being overtly aggressive versus being really, being motivated.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So Chinese always make fun of paper tigers. They're
Mm-hmm.
so big on the outside, and you punch them and they collapse. You
Mm-hmm.
know, Chinese talk about real strength,
Mm-hmm.
where you're just solid inside and you know what you stand for and you know what your principles are.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had lots and lots of setbacks.
Yeah.
Oh, but I don't remember them, which actually says a lot. What
Yeah.
does it say? No, it says I don't dwell on them. That I'm looking constantly far ahead. And if something bad happens, I move on.
Yeah.
And I just thought of one actually. So when President Bush got into office, everybody was, like everybody was gossiping.
Mm-hmm.
And Elaine Chao was going to be in the cabinet. I mean, everybody thought, Elaine Chao was going to be in the cabinet. She was the first deputy secretary of color, in the cabinet. Her next step is going to be the cabinet. And she's done really well. So everybody was expecting that. So I go for my interview. That in itself is another story. Very different from this current occupant of the White House.
Yes.
When I was going for my interview, they made it very private. I got a phone call that said, an unmarked car is going to come pick you up on the corner of 17th and K.
Mm-hmm.
So be there at whatever time, I can't remember, 2:30. So I get there 15 minutes early and I'm just like, sauntering around this corner. And then this unmarked car, sure enough, white unmarked car pulls up. The door opens and they said, Miss Chow, come on in. And so I'm thrown in the car almost, and it goes into one of the hotels. I go through the back door, through the kitchen, all in an effort to avoid press. Very different from this administration now.
Yeah.
So I go up to the top floor where the penthouse is, and I climb up to the penthouse, and I'm interviewed by 4 people: the president-elect, vice president-elect, the chief of staff to be, and the personnel assistant to the president for personnel, the 4 of them. And there's me. We have a wonderful conversation for an hour about transportation, about what I would do, what needed to be done. And then afterwards, the president said, well, thanks so much for coming. We'll let you know. So this is right before Christmas in November. So Christmas comes, I don't hear anything. New Year comes, I don't hear anything. So I said to my husband, do you think they lost my telephone number? Of course not. And then I watch on television on January 2nd or 3rd. And the camera is focused on the entrance of the Texas governor's mansion, because that's where Governor Bush, President-elect Bush,
Yeah. Right.
was staying.
He's governor. Right.
Yes. And then 3 people come out and they are announced as the Secretary of Labor, Secretary of Energy, and the Secretary of Transportation. And it wasn't me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I am watching on television the announcement of Secretary Mineta to be the Secretary of Transportation.
Yeah.
I was crushed. Not for myself. I was crushed for my community, because I know so many Asian Americans watched me grow up, advance in my career. They were part and parcel of my journey.
Mm-hmm.
And the next step was supposed to be the cabinet. And I have disappointed them so terribly. I felt so, so sad. And then I get a phone call from the chief of staff. And I was so angry also. disappointed and angry because I said, I deserve that. Okay, I worked so hard for this. Anyway. So, and my husband says, you need to calm down. Just calm down, chill. He says, you need to play for the future.
Yeah.
That means you need to be smart. You need to be calm. And so sure enough, I get a phone call from the incoming chief of staff, and he says, we're really sorry, but Normanetta, we were going to have Normanetta as energy secretary, but he didn't want energy. And we wanted a Democrat in the cabinet, and he wanted transportation. So we had to give him transportation. I don't know whether that story is true, but that's what I was told. And so, but he said, we want you involved. What other position do you want in the administration? And so I put on my best Academy Award voice and kind of said, it was an honor to have been considered. I don't think I want to, I can do so much more for the administration outside the administration. So in a very graceful way, declined the offer. Okay, so I thought that was the end of the story. I know I'm taking a long time, but this is interesting. 11 days later, the Secretary of Labor designee flames out because she had apparently hired some illegal immigrants.
I remember that story. Yeah, right.
They're not called illegals now; they're called out of status. But at the time, they were called illegal.
Yeah, and that was a death knell, political.
Oh, you're the Secretary of Labor. You're supposed to, enforce the labor laws.
Yeah.
And so she. Let me just also emphasize: if you're ever in these positions, you must tell everything to the White House.
Yeah.
Because she's a friend of mine. I think very highly of her. But apparently some of the White House people didn't know about this. So when this story broke, they were unable to protect her.
Yeah.
So she was left hanging.
Yeah.
So they needed another nominee. And here I was, I'm well connected, meaning I knew all the senators. I was not going to have any trouble going through confirmation. I had been the deputy secretary. I had been vetted. My FBI clearance was clean.
And you hadn't burned your bridges from the previous disappointment, right?
So I get a phone call from the president, and he says, "Are you interested in being Secretary of Labor?" And I said, "Yes." And then and he was really funny. He says, "Well, I want you to we're gonna go on camera in 2.5 hours. So get your hair done and put on a nice outfit, and I'll see you there at transition headquarters." That's
so Elaine, it's terrible to have a setback for 11 days,
Oh, but that was devastating also. I mean, but anyway, you're right. So that's just a funny example that just popped into my head, but there were others. And I think it's really important just to keep on going, think about the future, be grateful. Yeah. Because I'm very grateful.
One of the things that people cite in our data sites is that the importance of mentorship and connections and so forth. Did you have mentors along the way that helped you along the way? And have you been able to do the same thing yourself?
I have had the best mentors in life, and that's my parents. They mentored me, they counseled me, they loved me. And I knew that whatever happened, if I were ever to fail, I can always go back home. And that is enormously empowering, that you can just go out and make all sorts of mistakes, not consciously, but it happens, that you have a place to go. And for mentors, I had mentors, but you have to look for them. Yeah. So I cozied up and I cultivated people who I wanted to get to know, whose advice I sought. And that's what I would advise people as well. If there's someone that you admire, that you like, you want to get to know, don't be shy. Go up and try to get to know them. A lot of times they're looking for young people they can support. And so, take a chance. And if they're not interested and you can't get through, well, their loss, not yours. You've got a great journey ahead of you. And so it's their loss. Yeah.
And in fact, that your message actually is the same message as one of the webcasts we had about how to develop mentors. And one of the lessons was you can't just say, well, I'll let it happen. It's like anything, you got to work at it.
And it's fun. It's fun.
because that's life. Life is that way, right? It's not conniving. That's the way people help people who they know and
Yeah.
respect, right?
And networking is fun. It's a chance for you to get to know other people, learn from them. It's empowering. And
Mhm.
it really is interesting.
You know, you were in government, and I guess you made the point right when you started that, wow, in business, you do a loan, it takes you a couple of days. In government, things take forever. What, you know, when you went into government, was that a source of frustration? How did you get around that? Because the government is just, it's not like when we had 13 states and, and you didn't have that, that much bureaucracy around, right? It's a very different story now. So how'd you deal with that? How'd you manage to get through it to be effective? Because you got a lot of things done.
I was very lucky that I went step by step. In my first cabinet meeting, I met someone who said to me, he was he looked very nervous. And I very kindly, if I say so myself, went up to say hello to him at the cabinet room.
Mhm.
And he says, I'm really intimidated. He confided. He says, I don't know anybody. And he says, I so envy you because you know everybody in town, which is true. I mean, I went from deputy maritime administrator to chairman of the Maritime Commission to deputy secretary of transportation, and then to the cabinet.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, I had worked at think tanks, so I knew a lot of people.
Mhm.
And so when you go step by step, you know, you gain a lot of experience.
Mhm.
And learning how to govern, learning how to be a good manager requires experience. And
Mhm.
so you learn how to work with the bureaucracy. You know how to motivate, how to entice, and what's real and what's not. In any one day, there's going to be problems, but 30% of that is just noise.
Yeah.
And that's just ordinary. So you have to learn to tune that out and focus on what's really troublesome,
Yeah.
what's really important. And you learn that through experience. So I'm pretty good at what I do, and it comes through experience.
Yeah. You know, you spent a lot of your career in government, but you also, you were head of the United Way, which is not a government agency. On the other hand, it's not a business. How was that different, and how did you make things happen and make a difference while you were head of the United Way?
Well, I've returned as a board member on United Way Worldwide. So it's a circle in life. I came in at a very bad time for the organization. It came about because of the resignation of the previous president of United Way, who had been caught embezzling and was accused of financial mismanagement and actually went to jail.
Mhm.
So I came in at a crisis situation. And
Mhm.
my first day of work, I remember walking into the building. And it's an organization that I knew well because I've been a United Way volunteer all my life, never a professional, but always a volunteer. And in that job, I stepped over the divide and became a chief professional officer, the president and CEO of this network. I remember people crying in the hallways because this was such a venerable organization and who they were just crushed
Mhm.
that their leader had done this and created such a crisis situation for the organization. And what I did was I gathered everyone uh, at United Way of America at the time, and I said to them that I need your help. I
Mhm.
can't do it on my own.
Mhm.
I want you to come with me in the rebuilding of United Way. And I want you to feel proud that at the end of our effort, you will be able to say to your children and your grandchildren that you were pivotal in the rebuilding and the restoration of a venerable organization, the
Yeah.
United.
Yeah.
And I think if you give people hope and if you give them a goal and you ask them for help, most people step up.
Yeah.
And then 4 years later, the organization did very well. Contribution levels had rebounded. And then I went on to help my husband with his reelection. I got married. So my
Yeah.
husband was an elected official. and he was coming up for his reelection, and no one had ever seen someone like me before. So I had to go out on the campaign trail, introduce myself, because people are interested not only in their elected leaders, but
Yeah,
also in their families and what they're like.
yeah,
So
that's right. But you know, in terms of, by the way, turnarounds are very difficult. They're very difficult because you don't have the luxury of time, or often the financial resources are constrained and so forth. But it's really quite different from taking over and just improving something that's, you know, at least not in turmoil. But I guess that's what you went through with the United Way. But also, what were you doing before United Way? In other words, was it,
director of the Peace Corps. I
oh,
was director of the Peace Corps. Yeah.
okay,
And
so
so I traveled throughout the world, and I got a chance to see the world. I went to many, many countries in Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia that I didn't have a chance to really go to before.
yeah, yeah. So it was sort of also, you know, partly like a government,
Volunteer driven,
yeah,
volunteer
volunteer
driven.
driven. So there were some similarities overlap that probably helped in the transition, right?
Yes, absolutely. And then I was recruited from uh, Peace Corps by Hydrick and Struggles to go to United Way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, one of the things I want to know is, look, you have been honored by so many organizations, honorary degrees, all sorts of things and so forth. If you look back, and I mean, this is actually a tough question because you've been involved with leading so many things. Are there some particular things that you're particularly proud of, that where you know, what you were able to accomplish, uh, you know, in the organizations that you've led?
There have actually been so many because I'm actually very outcome driven and results oriented. I feel that it's my responsibility to contribute. And that seems so strange, but I'm just, I'm an immigrant. I'm
Yeah.
hardworking, and I'm always afraid for the longest time that I was going to lose my job. And so I worked really, really hard,
Yeah.
in part because I loved it, but also because I was just always kind of like concerned. And I think what really helped was so I always under promised, is that the expression? Under promised and over delivered. Yeah, I always, idioms I still have some problems with.
Mhm.
And so so every single one of these jobs, there are accomplishments that I can talk about. So when I was deputy maritime administrator, I was involved in the preparation of training ships.
Mhm.
And when I was chairman of the Federal Maritime Commission, I was involved in breaking the cartels of unfair practices.
Mhm.
And then when I was deputy secretary, I was involved with the cleaning up of the Exxon Valdez and the Alaska physical, beaches. And then Hurricane Hugo and Loma Linda earthquake, I was involved in all of that. And then Secretary of Labor, as I mentioned, I'm really proud of the fact that I broke out the employment history of Asian Americans. And then I also started training programs that were more relevant
Mhm.
so that Americans can be more competitive in a worldwide economy. I also helped to pass the Pension Protection Act,
Mhm.
which protected the pensions of 44 million Americans. So there were so many opportunities. Then, of course, Hurricane Katrina. My department was the only one that wasn't criticized
Mhm.
because I worked during Labor Day because I'm the labor secretary. And so when Hurricane Katrina hit, my whole team was ready, and we were able to dispense income and unemployment insurance right away. And we actually prepared and had mobile units, and we sent workers equipped with laptops to register people whose phones were dying, who didn't have access to the phone or the computer to register for unemployment insurance. And then in Peace Corps, I started the first Peace Corps programs in the former Soviet Union in the aftermath of the collapse of the former Soviet Union.
Mhm.
So I started programs in Moldova, Russia, Albania, that's Central Europe. But so many of these other programs are direct results of what I've done. And then as secretary of a United Way, I saved an organization that was collapsing because of the misdeeds of its previous president.
Yeah.
I restored its good name.
Yeah.
And then when I was Secretary of Labor, as I mentioned, I've talked about a few things. And then Secretary of Transportation, I kept the supply chain open, moving, and safe during COVID. I also promoted the development of autonomous vehicles
Mhm.
by very simple little fix in the regulations. I allowed the definition of a driver to be an automated driving system.
Mhm.
So it didn't have to be a human being.
Mhm.
And that led to the explosion of the autonomous vehicle industry. It allowed private sector monies to come in based on what we had promoted. And I'm a safety regulator, so I can't promote that technology, but I can have regulations that will not hamper
Yeah,
innovation.
slow it down, right.
Yeah. So, but let me just say also, this is
Mhm.
so un-Asian. You can tell the Americanization of Elaine Chao has happened. Because when I was first starting out and people asked for my accomplishments, I was like so embarrassed. I didn't know what to say. Now I've learned. So
Yeah.
that's the other lesson. We can all learn. We all have a great capacity to learn if we want to.
Yeah.
And learning is more important than ever before because the world is changing so rapidly. And with all of the talk about AI, we still have to learn. We need to learn. So learning is really important. And that makes life more interesting as well.
Yeah. We're nearing the end of the hour, but I have two questions. One is this. Unfortunately, in general, Asian Americans are sort of underrepresented in the political life. If you look at the number of senators and congressmen and so forth, there is one Asian group that seems to be breaking through. That's Indian Americans. They seem to have been able to elect more for a number of reasons. Why do you think that's the case? That maybe you disagree, but
No, actually, we discuss it a lot. Indian Americans are the highest income group, community, actually, in the country.
right.
They're great, very aspirational, very high achievers. Mostly Democrats, by the way.
Yeah.
I think we talk about it a lot because there are institutions in which Indian Americans have done better than East Asians. And I think one reason could be that they speak English. There's greater facility with the language, number one. Number two, I think their culture is not nearly as anti-confrontational as East Asian cultures are. We're very, even today, I'm still kind of like, I don't like confrontation, man.
Yeah.
So going into the government or into politics, there are many routes.
Yeah.
You can go the elective route, you can go the appointed route.
Right.
So if you go into the administration, that's an appointed route, but you can only go in when your team is on the field.
Yeah.
So if it's a Democrat administration, you got to be a Democrat.
Right.
If it's a Republican administration, you got to be a Republican. The other route, or another route to be appointed or to kind of be employed, is working as a staffer on the Hill.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Congress or whether it's the state legislature, you can be a staffer. And then you can also try to go with the elective office route, in which case, you can run for school board commissioner or something. We are a democracy. So there are elected positions at every level, at the local, state, and federal level.
Yeah.
And to get experience, maybe you go at the local level first, or you can be a staffer, or you can work on a campaign so you can see what a campaign is like. But if you work on a campaign, it's most likely you're a volunteer.
Yeah. And
so
by
there
the
are
way,
many.
yeah, we interviewed Gary Locke, who, with the elected group, and it was so funny. he told the story about how he started at the local level and worked his way up. And he was laughing about it because he was, he was one of these conversation interviews. He was laughing because he said the state of Washington is not dominated by Asians. He said, I had I had to relate to all the people regardless of their ethnicity, and that's how I won. And because he said, take a look at the state of Washington. It's not like Hawaii where it's 40% Asian, it's there's just not that many of them. So you have to think through that, but you also have to decide what fits you. Some people are able to run for office, some people are not. It's your personality and your skills and so forth.
And you have to select a district, or most likely it's a district that will fit you. So if you are a blue, you don't run in a red district. You're not going to make it. Okay, no matter how great you are. And if you are red, don't run in a blue district or blue, whatever, because you're not going to make it. So look at the voting history, and then also get to know the political apparatus, because there are kingmakers. Some are stronger than others, but there are people, influencers, who will help or detract from your bid for a political office.
Yeah, that's right. So we have just a couple of minutes left, and I want to end by just asking you if you have a few words of advice to the young people who are watching this broadcast and who will watch the recording in the future, because this will be permanently available in a library of interviews. What advice would you give to young Asian Americans who are moving up their careers, right?
Be proud, be confident. One of the greatest gifts my parents gave their daughters was to have pride in our ethnic heritage. We were never conflicted. We are both Americans and Chinese, and we're proud of our Chinese heritage, and we're proud of our American heritage as well. The thing to note is that don't adopt an American, like a stance, when you're with the Chinese, and don't be Chinese when you're with Americans. Be American when you're with American. Be Chinese when you're with the Chinese. And so we've always appreciated, our upbringing and our heritage. And the second thing also is be confident. There are many, many challenges that I have faced. But when I face challenges, I remember who I am. I am Ruth and James' daughter. Mm-hmm. Great patriots, courageous people, immigrants to this country who sacrifice so much. I am their daughter. Their blood runs through me, and my grandparents, their blood runs through me. And if they can make it through all the difficulties that they've encountered, I too surely must be able to make it as well. So with that, I have confidence.
By the way, I had the privilege of hearing your father speak at.
No, he's wonderful.
And he's
but
wonderful.
Each one of
and he's not a young guy, but he gave a wonderful speech, and it was very inspirational, and it was very human. But it helped the audience understand why he was successful, but also how he ended up with so many successful daughters.
But our story is not about us. Our story is, the story of America, and it's a story about immigrants coming here. And so we want to reassure those who may be going through a vulnerable period, those who may face uncertainty, to have heart, take pride, have confidence. Life ahead in this country is going to be good.
Yeah. By the way, and that's why we have this series, because we're really celebrating people in different walks of life who have contributed, been successful, but more importantly, contributed to this society, whether it was David Ho in HIV research, or David Henry Wong with M Butterfly and so forth, or Janet Yang with the Joy Luck Club and Screen Actors, being president and so forth, or Gary Locke, being also like you, a cabinet member and an ambassador, so forth. So, by the way, he was not the most loved in China when he was ambassador, because he would tell it the way it was, and that's that's the right way of Americans, right? So, well, with that, first of all, I want to thank Elaine for your agreeing to be interviewed. This
No,
is
thank
a
you.
wonderful discussion, and I hope the audience, first of all, got to know you a little bit better, but also maybe came away with a few lessons in their own lives to help them succeed, whether they have setbacks or whatever. But as you said, you got to be proud and be brave and
Have confidence.
and and learn how to pivot if you run into a wall, because the only thing that's certain is you will run into a wall at some point. So it's just a
Absolutely.
question of whether you figure out how to climb over the wall or through the wall or around the wall. It's not whether you'll ever hit a wall, because you will. That's the way life is. So thank you very much. And I
Thank you.
just saying you.
I've just, no, it's been such a delight. I hope your listeners and your viewers have found it interesting. I wish I can say hello to everyone. So thank you so much for tuning in.